I'm not sure if all the Jelly Rolls stuff is making it to the concert. Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host, coming to you from a very lovely Williams, Arizona. By the way, I'm at the Loves in Williams. This is like one of my favorite truck stops in the whole wide world. Not because the truck stop's particularly great, although it's just fine, but this is a great place. I've stopped here in the past, gone and ridden my bike. I'm not going to do that because I want to get over to Kingman today, but I did stop and take a shower. But right behind where I'm parked is a national forest, and so there you could hike, you could ride a bike. If you had a mountain bike, you could ride back there, because I rode my mountain bike back in the national forest one time. The streets are bike friendly in the town. The other cool thing about Williams is, if you've never been to the Grand Canyon, first of all, go there before you die. I'm just saying, go there before you die. But this is a really cool stop if you have a little bit of time. Like, let's say you're, I don't know, you ran out of hours, you got to do a 34 or something crazy like that. This is probably one of the best places to do it, because excuse me, because you could take a train from here in Williams to the Grand Canyon and back. It takes you right up by the visitor center, and it's not that expensive. I think it's maybe like 70, 80 bucks round trip. And I've never taken that train, but I'm sure that would be a spectacular train trip. It's, sorry, it's old passenger cars, but it's, it would be a great way to go up to the Grand Canyon. You don't have to drive your truck up there. But yeah, I think it would be, if you had the time, and you were going to be here anyway, it'd be worth it. And you probably, even if you were going to be here, like let's say you had a long lead time on a trip and you got here right away, I think the train runs every day, and yeah, I think you could, in 24 hours, you definitely could get, if you got here, let's say in the evening, and you were going to leave the following evening, I think you could get on the train in the morning, go up, see a lot of cool, awesome stuff, and come back in the same day. So just a little shout out for Williams. Speaking of shout outs, I want to give a shout out to a bunch of American athletes who have been just repping us in a big way on the world stage. The first person I want to talk about is a guy that, if you're not into cycling, and especially you're not into cycle racing, you may have never heard of, and his name is Sepp Kuss. Sepp is his first name, and Kuss is his last name. He's from Durango, Colorado. He just had a birthday on September 12th. So he was, I think he's 29 now. But he is, today, probably actually already over because I'm in Pacific time, but he has won the Vuelta de España, which is one of the 3 world cycling grand tours. The other 2 are the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France. Now, but what's really interesting about the fact that he's winning is, last time an American won it was 10 years ago, and that is still a pretty rare event. That was Chris Horner, who's from Bend, Oregon. He won it 10 years ago. But the thing that Sepp Kuss did this year that is just, even without winning any of these races, he raced all 3 of the Grand Tours, which is pretty remarkable. It's almost unheard of, and even the best pros, the best cyclists in the world, do not usually do that. It is so arduous. It is so hard, and he raced all 3. And he's on a team, the Jumbo Visma squad that's full of superstars. So he's just rocking it, repping the United States in a big way. Another person who's repped the United States in a big way, and let me preface this by saying I wasn't sure that I'd see another Serena Williams in my lifetime, but Coco Gauff won the U.S. Open tennis tournament. That's her first major, and props to her. And also props to the GOAT. Simone Biles is back, and she is so empowering to so many people. She basically took a mental health break from something that she's been doing for a long time and that she's the very best at, but even she was willing to say, hey, I got to step back from this, right? I need a break. But she came back super strong. She's won the nationals again, and took some time out for her. Got married, so everything's really cool. I just super impressed with her. And because I don't mind talking to adults with my sunglasses and hat on. I want to just give a shout out to Coach Prime over there at Colorado. Nail biter yesterday. They didn't cover the spread, but the guy's just impressive. Even without his personal football credentials, what he accomplishes with his teams, and just the whole idea of the whole person, right? His guys wear suits to games, and the discipline, and you could see some of the videos of him at Jackson State on YouTube, and he's an impressive guy, and he talks some smack. Don't get me wrong, man. The dude can bring it in a lot of categories, but man, he has turned dudes you never heard of into household names. In some cases, kids that were just going to HBCUs or smaller colleges. And he is certainly the recruiter to beat. I don't know if he's the coach to beat yet, but hey, winning fixes a lot of things. They're 3-0. I mean, now they're going to get into the meat of the pack, whatever the hell it is anymore, schedule. They're playing Oregon next week, and I think the following week they got Washington. So those are two teams that are maybe, although I thought, TCU was ranked in the top 20, so they shouldn't have been a pushover, and they weren't, right? That was a close game. Nebraska, I don't have a lot of respect for them. Maybe at some point they'll turn it around. And, the game yesterday, like I said, was close as it could be probably, but that's what happens with those in-state rivalries a lot of times. So that's that. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about TNT. I think I'm gonna leave my hat on because my head was getting a little sweaty. Talk a little bit more about TNT. I pride myself on being able to identify solutions to things that I identify as problems. And I talked about TNT the other day, and Jim C, if you watch his channel, he did a really good fact-based kind of video yesterday about training. He talked about the money, and I think he even had a good trainee, but he talked about sitting around a lot and having loads that weren't paying well, etc. And and how much it was costing them to have that trainee on the truck. And one of the things that I was thinking back to my training at night. Now, first of all, and I've said this before, I'm not a fan of doing training somebody to get a CDL, to take the CDL practical exam by putting them behind the wheel out on the road, out in the middle of nowhere. I don't think I want to teach backing at a Walmart distribution center at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's not the place to do it, right? We don't teach soldiers to shoot by sending them to a war without ever having trained them, right? We don't teach pilots to land on an aircraft carrier, by, just sending them out to a carrier the first time they ever get behind, in the seat. And so I'm not sure that training people to get a CDL by saying, all right, let's go on a road trip. I don't think that's the right answer. Because like I've said before, keeping it between the mustard and the mayonnaise is the easiest part. So one of the things that so obviously that's how I feel about the PSD portion, right? I think how I did it on a pad with professional instructors, and that's all we did for 3 weeks, and then we all got our CDLs when I was at night. I think that's the way to do it. But let's talk about TNT, because that I think is really the bigger issue right now at Prime. And the thing is, I think Prime's struggling to get trainers. The reason I think that is because, as Jim C identified in his video, at the very time when gross revenue to trucks was dropping because of the market, Prime went ahead and raised the pay. And the thing is that I don't care why they raised the pay. It just was bad timing. And so if they wanted to raise the pay at the same time that revenue was decreasing, that the time between, loads was increasing, then what they should have done is said, okay, well, we're going to have to subsidize this, right? And the thing is that, ironically, when loads are going down, like the training I had on my truck for about 10 days, a couple months ago, I did almost all the driving. Why? Because I didn't trust him. But also the reason I did most of the driving, and I was in the front for all of his driving, was that our loads were basically single loads, maybe super solo loads, right? They weren't, we were routinely stopping overnight at truck stops, or stopping at truck stops so I could sleep, because I was up all night. But we weren't in that big of a rush, right? So, but at the same time, I'm paying this guy as if we're running as a team, okay? So that's the problem, right? But so here's the solution. Prime can't do anything about bad trainees. I mean, you just get who you get, and you just got to weed them out. And Prime can't really do a lot about the market, right? I mean, they can go out, sales can work the phones, do what I used to call dialing for dollars, right? And try to get more business. But that's only going to go so far. So what Prime has to do is say, hey, if we want these TNT people trained, even though they're bringing in not a lot of people, but if we want these people trained, we are going to have to do something to ease the burden on the trainers financially. So what I would say is, for starters, the 50,000 miles, I think that we've seen that 50,000 miles does not a good driver make, right? 30,000 doesn't make a good driver either. What makes a good new driver is a good trainer. And we need to incentivize trainers. But the other thing too is that I think having this hard, fast mileage number is not super productive. I think it should be based on time. And my training at night, and again, this was in 2019, but my training at night, 28 days. Because some days the truck doesn't do stuff like go down the road, but you're still working. Maybe, like I had a day recently where I did 3 drop and hooks, right? I had 3 different trailers on my back during one drive shift. Okay, I'm pretty sure I didn't get very far that day. I didn't drive like 600 miles, but I did a lot of work, right? I inspected 3 trailers, I did all the stuff, sent all the, macros and everything in just to do all that work. And that's trucking work, right? Like, that's the stuff that people need to know how to do just as much as keeping it out of a ditch. So what if Prime said, hey, look, let's just do this. Let's do 6 weeks of training in the truck. And no matter how many miles it is, because at some point, right, miles, there's a diminishing return on the number of miles. In other words, somebody that's driven 30,000 miles is not going to get appreciably better by being around for another 20, only part of which they might drive themselves. But if we use just days where they deal with they see what it's like to deal with the shop, they see what it's like to deal with a breakdown or whatever it is, right? Like, they're doing a lot of the stuff that you need to do on a day-to-day basis to be successful. That probably meets the bill. But the other thing that needs to happen is Prime needs to subsidize the trainee pay in one of 2 ways. Either they kick in part of it, like say $200 a week, or they guarantee a certain level of revenue to the truck regardless, as long as the truck is available, right? They guarantee a certain amount of revenue per week. Now, one way to do it would be, I would say, guarantee like $900 a day in revenue. So let's say that the truck is only available for 5 out of the 7 days, then the truck would only be guaranteed to get at least $4,500 in revenue. But if they're available the whole week, then the truck is guaranteed to get $6,300 in revenue. That amount is enough to probably pay a trainee and have a trainer making, netting out at least north of $1,500 in a week, right? But Prime needs to say, if you're available for 7 days, if you don't make $6,300 on your own, then we will just add money to the kitty to get you to $6,300. Then we'll start doing all the deductions. The other thing that I think is a great idea, and they did it at night, is I've always believed that a trainer has a huge impact on retention. And the reason I say that is because when somebody feels like they've been trained well and they're happy and they had a good training experience, that carries over to when they get their own truck, whether it's company or lease. And that relationship sets the tone for their time at the company, right? Before they even, deal with a fleet manager on their own or a driver manager on their own or anything, they've had a good trainer that's a representative of the company. And to reward that kind of performance, which results in good retention, I know at night they gave a bonus to trainers when the trainee hit certain milestones. So like, for example, when I got to 6 months with the company, my trainer got a bonus, and I want to say it was over $1,000. It was meaningful, because right now, for instance, if I took somebody completely through TNT, my bonus is $500. And a lot of us who have done TNT in the past haven't taken a lot of people all the way through, because we get orphans, or somebody just quits, leaves the truck, whatever, is not trainable. We never get that bonus, okay? But I say, when somebody trains somebody for that 6 weeks, if that person's around 6 months after they started, you pay a bonus. And then I think Knight had another bonus at a year. And then after that, I believe you got some portion of what those people drove. I don't know if it was a penny, and I don't know when that kicked in. It might have kicked in at 18 months. But, you know, Knight's position was, hey, when you train, and here's how it worked at Knight. The trainee got $500. I got $500. Company paid for it. My trainer got $200 a week extra in his paycheck. Plus, he got his pay, which would have been higher than mine anyway. He got every mile we rolled, he got paid for the mileage. So a lot of weeks, my trainer who wasn't responsible for buying fuel, he wasn't responsible for paying me, he wasn't responsible if I wrecked the truck because I had a CDL, none of that. He got 200 extra plus all the miles we drove. Now, we didn't really run as a team. We kind of ran a little more super single at the beginning, and then, you know, some days I did all the driving, and some days he did most of the driving or whatever. And I would do more of the driving the farther along in training I got. That's how it was designed. But I know that it was lucrative for trainers at Knight. I mean, I know company guys at Knight, and this is, like I said, 4 years ago, that were making like $140 a year, and they were training pretty often. Like, they would have 6 to 8 trainees a year, but you know, they weren't on the hook for anything. Honestly, like, my trainer got paid when the truck was sitting still, because he was getting his $200 a week, and he would go on home time. I would be on the truck at the terminal, and that would count towards my days. Like, if we didn't have a trip, it was still good. So my biggest concern about Prime is not what they've done in the past, right? They've put a good company together, right? The people whoever's worked there the last 50 years, they've put a good place together. The problem is they have to adapt. And I'm worried that they are unwilling to adapt to the new realities. And that does not bode well for the future. And let me say that, and I'll just point this out, I think I've said it before. When Robert Lowe started Prime in 1970, the biggest retailer in America was Sears. When's the last time you shopped at Sears? The biggest retailer in America with the tallest office building in America. I know my mom worked at Sears. My wife had family members that worked at Sears. Sears was huge. Sears was so big, and this is more than 50 years ago, but Sears was so big that there are a lot of houses in America that were built with kits that Sears sold through their catalog. Okay, that's how huge Sears was. When's the last time somebody went to Walmart and got a kit to build a house? That's how huge Sears was. Now, Sears didn't sell groceries, so I'll give that to Walmart. But if you don't change with the times, you will not be around as long as a lot of people think you will. And even recently, I want to say Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos said that about Amazon. He's like, we're not here forever. And, you know, that's true of most companies. There are very, very few companies in America that have been around over like 100 years. Don't get me wrong, 50 years is a long time for a company to have been around and been successful. But it doesn't mean it's going to go on for another 50 years or even another 5 years. Stuff happens quickly. So anyway, I thought I'd share that with you. Hopefully somebody at Prime is listening. I'm not saying my answers are completely correct, but I bet you if they took the things I was saying and said, we're going to implement the Terry plan, the Tim Travels plan, a lot of drivers would be like, all right, I can work with that. And a lot of trainees would probably be like, okay, six weeks, I'm going to learn everything I can in 6 weeks. And, you know, it could be good for everybody. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'm going to be delivering in the Inland Empire tomorrow. And we'll see what happens after that. How's everything outside, BB? I think it's good. So be safe, and I'll talk to you soon.